diplomatic negotiations. Now, Cormac Smith was strategic communications advisor to Pavlo Klimkin when he was Ukraine's Foreign Office Minister, and joins me now. Well, they're burning up the air miles then, Mr. Smith, between Canada and Poland and the Netherlands and London. Should now, with the benefit of hindsight, should more have been done earlier? It's not as if this happened overnight. Good morning.
Good morning, Nick, and thank you for having me on. And could I make a small plea? Could you please call me Cormac?
Sure, Cormac, done.
Mr. Smith makes me feel very ill. Thank you, and it's nice.
I'm taking you back to your school days. I apologise, Cormac. Go on.
in the 70s, yes.
You and me both.
Look, your question was.
We did see this coming, and it's great that all these leaders are now sitting around sitting around tables with their business meetings, drinking fizzy water. But should they have done more earlier?
Yes, and the Canadian Prime Minister you just quoted as saying that it's time to turn our back on Russia. It was arguably time to turn our back on Russia in 2008 when they invaded Georgia. It was most definitely time to turn our back on Russia in 2014 when they illegally annexed Crimea and invaded Donbass and have had a low-level war for the last 8 years, waged not only against Ukraine, but quite frankly, a hybrid war waged against the West. I've got to tell you and listeners, we are already at war with Russia. It is now only a matter of escalation, and who does that escalation first?
How do you see that escalation taking place, Cormac? What should my listeners watch out for?
Well, look, I debated with Lord Dannatt on television a week ago now, and I argued for a no-fly zone, and he argued against it. And I've got to say, I lost that argument. It was a bit of a David and Goliath, but fight.
Right.
But I would not take back. I've listened back to the debate, and I lost my cool a little bit because I just got very emotional, and I would not change one thing that I said. I now think a no-fly.
I didn't watch it, Cormac. Tell me the one point he made that really resonated. Then, what was the key argument he put against your plan, Cormac?
Well, look, there was a number of well-made points. He talked about the nuclear point. He said, that the Ukrainians were incredibly brave, but unfortunately it was better that, tens of thousands of Ukrainians die rather than hundreds of thousands or even millions of us. He made the point I argued about growing up under mutually assured destruction.
Yes.
He made the point, very well made, that, during the Cold War, we had rational actors in both the East and the West, and today we don't, making a very, very clear reference to the mental state of Vladimir Putin. They were the points that, and also the other point that really stuck in my mind that he made was that even traditionally, the Russians have had a much lower threshold for moving to nuclear weapons than traditionally we have had in the West. So, a great man, and I notice now that he's getting into the argument about how we deal with refugees and so forth. But, from the Ukrainian point of view, and most of the people I speak to still are Ukrainian, some at a very senior level, because I'm basically trying to do my bit on this and give my, because it's very personal to me. But, what I say at the moment is the very least we need to do is a no-fly zone, and there are various options on that. We may have to do much more.
Lastly, Cormac, before I move on, in a sentence, describe, having worked so closely with them, describe the spirit of the Ukrainian people.
They are the toughest, most resilient, hard as nails people I ever came across, but at the same time, they are a lovely, warm, welcoming, peace-loving people who have thirsted for peace for hundreds of years, but in the last 100 years in particular, they have been horribly abused with the Holodomor in the 30s, where between 7 and 10 million were wiped out in Stalin's genocidal famine. The Second World War, remember, Ukraine was the country who lost more than anybody else.
Well, Cormac, thank you. Cormac Smith was strategic communications advisor to Pavlo Klimkin as Ukraine's Foreign Office Minister, also served as Deputy Director of Communications at the Cabinet Office. Listening to that is Oliver Bullows.